Okay, so today's year, although it's past dating, we're going to be talking today about the engagement period. Right? Up until now, we've discussed dating and what are the criteria, what are you looking for. Each person is individual, and how to go through the dating process in order to keep it focused. And now we're going to talk a little bit about what the engagement period is about and how to handle it the best possible way. I did see a story years ago that said that Rav Shach said that if he could, he would make, instead of making the engagement period 3 months, he would make it 3 hours. Yeah, the engagement period is a very challenging time. That's why we want to make it as short as possible, because even though it can be a very happy time, and it should be a very happy time, it is very, very dangerous during that time. There are potentially a lot of big mistakes can be made, and a lot of terrible fallout. Everybody knows stories of broken engagements. And what exactly happened in these stories? Everybody's an individual. We can't know about every single situation. Even many times the people involved in the situations don't understand all the details of what happened over here. So we have to understand, first of all, that this period is a dangerous period. It could be very sympathetic, but it can have a lot of potholes, a lot of bumps along the way, which potentially could be could break the shidduch. So the number one thing is, do not go based only on the shiur. Anybody who is during this period should be talking to a rav, a mentor, somebody who's going to guide them specifically for themselves. Each individual person needs to have somebody to talk to and to give specific guidelines for each person. There isn't one set of guidelines for everybody. If it would have one set of guidelines, then a lot of people either just wouldn't keep it or it would destroy them. So every person needs to have their own specific sit down with somebody who knows them, somebody who understands a little bit more about the matzav that personal person is in order to give them proper hadrachah. That is the first really main rule when it comes to this, because anything else I'm going to say on top of this, anything can be changed dependent on that, depending on what each individual person is going through, or what their personal situation is. Okay, having said that, what are some of the ideas that are happening during engagement? Okay, the first thing is engagement is that you've already committed to getting married. That means that there's a certain time frame. You will get married at a certain point. Not like in the Goyish world where people can be engaged for 25 years. Yeah, I know of a couple that were engaged, for 19 years. This couple was not from. They were not from. I'm not even sure if both people were Jewish even. Yeah, they were engaged for 19 years until finally they broke up. Yeah, that was not what we're talking about in engagement. There was another story of a couple that I heard that they were engaged and they set a wedding date. I'm not sure exactly. It's 4 or 5 years. They set a wedding date. So when I spoke to the relative of this person, they told me that. I said, at least they set a wedding date. Because if you set a wedding date, it'll happen. One way or another, that date will happen. Yeah, you want to set it for 5 years from now, it will still happen. And lo and behold, it did. They got married. And subsequently, I heard they got divorced too. Yeah? So we also need to understand that the purpose over here is for a real strong marriage. That's what we're looking for, and therefore the engagement period, which is very, very short, and it should be very short relative to the rest of your life. Yeah, it has to be done in a way where you're not going to regret something that you did during your engagement period for the rest of your life, because that small span of time is really not worth it. It's really not worth doing something during that span of time that you're going to end up regretting for the rest of your life. So, how long should the engagement period be? Well, this is a little bit of a subjective question because you might have to find a hall. You have to set a wedding date, and the most important thing about a wedding date for most people is finding a place to actually get married. Some people, they will not get married without this and this band, and if I don't have that band, then I'll change the wedding date to get that band. But for most people, they just need to have a place to get married. That's the date. That's when we're setting it. An average date, usually somewhere between 2 to 3 months, 2.5, around that amount of time. Why is that the amount of time? The reason is because a person needs to be ready. A person needs to be ready to get married. And to be ready to get married takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work. It's a lot of preparation that goes into making a wedding, a lot. And even if one side says, well, for me it's not so much, we have to respect over here. There are a lot of other people. I remember my Rebbe told us many times. He said, when you get married, and he was talking to us as Bochurim, he said, when you get married, it's not your simcha. It's your parents' simcha. Let them do what they want. It's their simcha. It's not your happen to be the star of the simcha. Maybe she's really more the star of the simcha, but you're the second star. Yeah? But it's their simcha. It's the parents' simcha. So therefore, give it to them. Let them have it. Let them be the Bali Simcha at their Simcha. So we have to take into account there are other people here. So certain preparations need time. You need time to be able to arrange all the things that go into a wedding, like a hall, a caterer, music, clothing. You have to find an apartment. You have to buy things for that apartment. You can have an apartment, but you need beds. Yeah, the basics of an apartment is 4 walls and a door. Yeah, you have to have a bathroom there, running water, electricity, important as well. Gas would be lichatchila. Yeah, 2 beds and a refrigerator. That's what you need. Oh, what about a table and chairs? That's something you could already get during Shabbat Brachos if you need it. Aronot, closets, also something that you don't need necessarily to live on. But some people, they're getting married. Let me move into my new apartment ready. Why should I? Now, it depends on the situation. Everybody's a little bit different. Every situation's a little bit different. But there's certain basics, and those basics need to be taken care of. And it's not something that you find in a second. Yes, some people have siyata d'shmaya, and they'll find an apartment. Boom, first apartment they found. Like the first girl I went out with. I also got engaged. The first apartment. Wow, this guy's got tremendous siyata d'shmaya. Okay, but it doesn't always work like that. And sometimes it takes time. So there has to be a certain amount of time that you're giving towards this. So in Mele, it has to be a certain span of time. We don't want it to be too long, which we'll get to in a little bit. But there certainly needs to be things to do. The Chassan and the Kala both need to prepare for the wedding in a spiritual way. They both need to learn halachos that they've never seen or heard before, which is an entirely new world of Taras Mishpacha, and that also takes time. It does. That takes time to learn and to start getting used to in order to be prepared for the chasana, and that's not something that can be done in a span of even 1 month. Many people do get married very, very quickly like that, and they have to deal with the fallout of these potential issues. For example, they get married so fast and they just don't have some of the basics that they need in their home, so they have to live with it afterwards. Or they didn't finish their chassan classes or their kala classes, and then they have to finish those also. And what ends up happening many times is that once you're married, I just don't have time anymore. I don't have time for this, and then yes, who's gonna suffer? They're gonna suffer. They're gonna suffer without having proper preparations. They're going to be the ones that they're gonna suffer. They might not realize it in the very beginning. There's a lot of gila rina ditza v'chedva in the beginning of a marriage, a lot of excitement, so that kind of like washes over everything else, and they don't notice it, but there are certain foundations that have not been set, and if they are ignored and they're just pushed off until the point where they never gotten, so then they'll never have them. So having this amount of time, it could be a little bit less, could be a little bit more. Again, every situation is going to be different. But there needs to be this amount of time, usually, in order to be able to set things up properly. Now, we don't want it to be too long, like I said before, is because there's a lot of danger. What's the danger? I'll be very clear. Dating is for marriage. That's the point. We're not going to meet girls, or girls not going to meet boys just because it's nice and it feels good and gets your hormones going. That's not the point. We're getting married. The point is to find my other half in order to build a home. So once I found that person, I know we're committed to each other, we are going to get married, we're going to build this home. So somebody might say, I found her already, Rabbi, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? We're getting married. What's the big deal is that until you put a ring on her finger, you're not married. You're not married at all. It's the same exact thing with any stam girl on the street. Halachically, there is no connection between this boy and this girl until you put the ring on her finger and say, nothing. There's no difference. Yes, it's true. Maybe there's a tanoim, which is a be'etzim. Tanoim is a financial contract which says that both sides are committing to spend the amount of money in order to get ready for the chasana, and if one person reneges, what are the consequences of that? But the tanoim doesn't make it that these two people are married. There is no halachic marriage until he puts a ring on her finger. Nothing. She's the same as any other girl out there. Therefore, like what excuse is there to be doing something which is not sanctioned by halacha, which could be a precarious or lead to a precarious or have a din yahar lo yavar on it? What's the heter over here? There is no heter. There's no such thing. I'm going to be a little bit more practical now. Sometimes a couple, when they have already committed to each other, if we're going to get married, that's a big boost in the relationship. When we were talking about building up a relationship, we were talking about first understanding hashkafically that this is mati. And we discussed that there has to be attraction. We discussed there has to be chemistry, the personalities have to mesh. Then a little bit we discussed opening up and trying to make to feel more comfortable with the other person, sharing important things with the other person. Once you've gotten engaged, that's a commitment. That's a massive commitment that a person is taking on themselves, and it makes them feel like, wow, our relationship just took a big step up. And that could, make a person feel really good. And you should feel good. You're getting married, Hashem, soon. But what happens is that naturally a person wants, okay, so now let's take the next step. Right, the next step is in 3 months. No, but I want to make another step now already. You've hit a ceiling. That's it. There's only so high a person can go at this point. You cannot go through the roof at this point. Why? Very partial. You're just not married. You're not. A while ago, a guy came over to me, and he had a extremely long date with his soon-to-be wife. Extremely long. And it just drained him. Completely drained him. This date. Yeah? And I said to him, why'd you go out for 10 hours? Why'd you do that? Well, I'm not supposed to? What do you mean? We're getting married. Huh? It's why you're not married. You're just not. You're not married. There's only so much closeness that you can have because you're not married. A person who tries to go beyond either will end up doing something usher or will end up being very frustrated because you just can't. That's just the mitzvah. You can't. A person needs to know that next step is coming. And that's why we're keeping this engagement as short as possible. The next step is coming. Once you're married, it's a whole different world. And then, Bez Hashem, you'll be able to grow with each other for the next until 120. But you can't start acting in a way that you're married before you're married. You just can't. Yeah? There are people out there who think that they're already married before they're married. I've heard this. I've heard it from people. People have said to me, it's like we're married already for X number of years. I don't know exactly what that means, but I really hope by the time you marry that much of time, you're a little bit better than you are now. Yeah? It's not shaykh. It's not shaykh, but it comes from an internal need to feel better, to feel closer. Because I've already gotten to this level of commitment where I know this person is going to be my husband, wife. I know that, and because of that, I want to feel even closer now. But it's not possible. It's just not. Now, this is a lot harder for boys than it is for girls. Girls do not have the same Yetzer Hara that boys have. And because of that, the dangers for boys are much worse than the dangers for girls. And that's why many times girls might not understand, like, what's the problem? What's the big deal? Why can't we do this and this and that? Sometimes the girls do understand. They don't have the same Yetzer Hara, but they still might feel that there's a certain electricity in the air. There's a certain, magnetism that's happening over here that might end up something not okay. When we're building a marriage, we want the marriage to be strong. How do you have the strongest marriage? Where does the strongest marriage come from? Essentially, a man and a woman really can't live with each other. They are so different. They are so physically different, emotionally different. Everything about them is so different that it really be impossible for them to live with each other. If it wouldn't be for that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put them together, so then there'd be no reason for them to be together. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a certain drive pushing them together, but even that drive is not good enough at a certain point if you don't have HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the marriage as well. That's what it means. Ish ve'isha zoiche, shchina shruya b'neim. If they're zoicha, the shechina is with them. If they bring the shechina into their home, that's when they're going to be able to be a strong unit. But if a couple decides that they're going to, wanted to build this kesher without a Kodesh Baruch Hu, so then it could be in the very beginning like any avera, which starts off with a certain sweetness. Mayim genuvim yimtaku. The sweetness that comes from an illicit relationship, something that's asur. But ultimately, that ruins the relationship. This is very, very dangerous, and it's very easy for this to happen. It's very easy for it to happen. Any couple, like I said many times, I've yet to meet a chassan who hasn't found his kala to be attractive. Right? Because if she wasn't attractive, he probably wouldn't be marrying her. No, he definitely wouldn't be marrying her. So therefore, there is already some kind of attraction. So if there's already this attraction, so how am I doing this? What am I doing to make HaKadosh Baruch Hu a member of this partnership? That, like the Gemara says, Shlosha Shutzim Ba'adam. We have to keep halacha. That it might sound a little bit like boring and blah and it's very, very difficult, but this is the foundations. This is the building blocks to our future. Yes, we want to keep this as short as possible in order to keep the nisayon as small as possible, but to decide, no, I'm going to do that. I'm going to decide. I know it's okay. Everything's okay. This is it's going to end up hurting the couple more than anybody else. Lemaise, that's why many rabbanim will give very specific guidelines of how much time chassan and kala should spend with each other, and that's going to be something very personal. You can go to extremes where you have in some parts of the Hasidic world and maybe others where they might get engaged and get married a year later, but the chassan and kala barely see each other during that span of time. And you might have other situations where the engagement period is so short that they basically have to be working every single day together in order to find all the things that they need. There are going to be a lot of things. If you don't find an apartment, you're going to go from one agent to another agent to another agent. They're going to end up spending a lot of time with each other just looking for an apartment, spending time with each other looking at different halls. So depending on the situation, depending on the couple, depending on whoever their mentor is, that's the amount of time that they should be spending with each other. But certainly it should not be that every single day they're spending hours upon hours with each other. That's just not going to be healthy for anybody.
That goes for like texting and calling.
So very good question. Really, the answer to that question of texting, calling also is very individual. It's very, very individual. So the answer to that is straight individual. But there is a difference between the amount of time you actually physically spend with each other, the amount of time that you're on the phone with each other, and the amount of time that you're texting with each other. I know that texting and voice notes and all these things are this is like the way of communication nowadays. But what we need to realize is that those types of communication are actually quite low. They're a very low form of communication. I even heard one time a guy said that he loves texting because this way he doesn't have to talk to his wife. Yeah? That's a sad situation when somebody says something like that. But the truth of the matter is he hit on a point. And that is when you're texting, you're not talking. And sending a text with a emoji, I pronounced that right? Emoji? Yeah, there with a heart or whatever, it's still not the same thing as being in physically close place together with a person. It is very, very different. So each one of those things has to be evaluated based on, again, the situation that this couple finds themselves in. It's not something that can be set in stone for everybody that this is the way it should be. Maybe there's a standard for yeshiva bochrim coming from this yeshiva or from this style, from this city or whatever, and maybe certain rabbonim, if people come to them, they would have somewhat of a more standard. But each person is an individual, and this is something that anyway you need to know. I'm just going to take 1 minute to talk, make a different side point. You should always be asking questions from people who know you. When you, Be'ez Hashem, you start your own lives, get married and start your own homes, it is ma'od kedai to be kona Rav. Say lecha Rav. Have your Rav, and not just a Rav that that he's the Rav of the community, and you'll call him on the phone every once in a while. He doesn't know who you are, or whatever. You make a kesher with your Rav, because it's not just in the areas of marriage, but for the rest of your life, it's worth the kinyan. It's worth the kinyan. Not just, again, this is not just after marriage, but certainly bachrim or should have somebody that they can talk to about these things. Having a mentor before marriage and having a Rav after marriage is extremely important. A lot of times you will ask questions, and the answer is going to be different depending on who's the one answering the question and who's the one asking the question, and if there's a relationship between them. Halacha, no Rav is going to give you a kula that's not sanctioned by halacha, unless he's not a Yirei Shamayim. But at the same time, many times in certain issues, there is a wide range of shittas. And in certain situations, you might be able to rely on certain shittas that other people wouldn't be allowed to rely on, but this situation allows it. And if the Rav understands you and he understands the halacha well, he understands where the two go together. Again, chas v'shalom, not to do anything against halacha, but sometimes there's the standard answer given to everybody, and the Rav doesn't know who you are, so he'll give the standard answer that's given to everyone. Why should I give you a super kula I don't know who you are. I have no idea. Like, why should you get that kula? It's extreme, and it's only given out in situations where it's absolutely necessary. Well, is my situation absolutely necessary or not? Well, the Rav's not going to know unless he knows you. So it's ma'od kedai. Just like having somebody to talk to before the marriage, so too after marriage. The Maisa, just to finish up the shir. The engagement period, like I said in the beginning, can be very enjoyable. It's exciting. There are a lot of things that we're preparing for. Every time you go for another thing, it's another exciting thing. You're looking for your own apartment. It's exciting. You're going to buy your suit, your new tie. You're going to, buy a refrigerator. You're going to buy. It's an exciting time period. We don't want to take that time period and ruin it by not having control over ourselves, not having control over situations. It's extremely, extremely dangerous. Some people are very, very extreme, go to extremes to avoid this. Some people who have long engagements will leave the country for a while. Yeah, certainly this happens. Let's say in Chutz La'aretz, that if they know that the engagement is going to be much longer than 3 months, let's say, so okay, it's going to be longer than 3 months. I'm going to Eretz Yisrael for a month and a half. Why? Because it's too long. It's too much time there. I don't need all that time, and you have too much time on your hands. So that also could drive a person crazy or to do things that aren't healthy for them or for their future. Therefore, person should enjoy their time in a halachic way, in a nice, proper way, and at the same time try their best to stay focused on what the whole purpose is. We'll stop over here.